I screened the mail at the jail. There were a lot of love letters and proposals of marriages to Ted Bundy, which was bizarre.
I would look at Richard Ramirez in the eye and say, he is the face of evil. And yet you look at him and you see the man of your dreams.
I can't help the way the world looks at him. They don't know him the way I do.
When Ted Bundy was alive, he had massive followings of fangirl-esque women who would write him letters and even defend him on national television. Mind you, they weren't just curious observers. They were in love. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, molested children, raped women, and was convicted of killing 13 people across the Los Angeles area from 1984 to 1985. Doreen Leoy married him in California's San Quentin State Prison on October 3, 1996. She called him her soulmate. She said she could see his innocence in his eyes, the same eyes that had watched children die: Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Chris Watts. Every monster has his admirers, every killer his love letters. But why? What drives ordinary people to fall in love with the worst humanity has to offer? The answer lies buried in the desert of northern Chile, where a taxi driver named Julio was about to teach us the darkest lesson about human nature. Julio Perez Silva was born July 15, 1963 in Puchoncaví. He was a Chilean serial killer, active between 1998 and 2001, known as the psychopath from Alto Hospicio. From the outside, he seemed ordinary, a taxi driver in a small mining town, quiet, unremarkable. In 1997, he lived in La Pampa, where nobody remembers a sign, not even a little one, that could have woken up mistrust. But inside his mind, something dark was stirring. Between September 1998 and August 2001, 14 women would disappear from the streets of Alto Hospicio, 14 daughters who never made it home, and Julio Perez Silva would become the monster responsible for every single one. His method was always the same, always precise, always horrifying. He would cruise the streets in his yellow taxi, looking for prey, young women walking alone, teenage girls waiting for buses. He'd pull over, smile, offer them a free ride. They trusted him. Why wouldn't they? He was just a taxi driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. But once they got in that car, once those doors closed, they entered hell. He'd drive them to remote locations, abandoned mines scattered across the desert places where no one could hear them scream. There, he would rape them, beat them to death with blows to the head, then throw their bodies into the deepest mine shafts he could find. Silva targeted young women and girls in the coastal town of Alto Hospicio, located in northern Chile. His brutal crimes shocked the nation in the late 1990s and early 2000s. 14 women, 14 daughters, sisters, friends. Their families never got to say goodbye. Their bodies were never recovered. They simply vanished into the darkness of those mines, forgotten by everyone except the man who put them there, and the women who would later write him love letters. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. While Julio was terrorizing northern Chile, something equally disturbing was happening in prison cells across America. The world's most notorious killers were receiving marriage proposals daily. There's actually a name for what those women felt watching Ted Bundy in court. Hybristophilia is an attraction to people who've committed outrageous crimes, like Ted Bundy. It sounds clinical, I know, but behind that sterile term lies something raw and disturbing about human psychology. If you do write me back, I'd be the happiest girl alive, that's for sure. That's from a real fan letter to Chris Watts, the man who murdered his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. Ted Bundy was not short of women writing to him in prison. These women would write consistently, claiming that they were in love with him and trying to convince him to write back and be their boyfriend. But why? What makes someone fall in love with a monster? The first reason is power. These women aren't attracted to weakness. They're drawn to the ultimate expression of dominance. Someone so dangerous that even thinking about them sends chills down your spine. In their minds, if they can tame the beast, they become special, protected, the only one safe from the monster's rage. It's the ultimate bad boy fantasy taken to its logical, terrifying conclusion. The second reason is the savior complex. Women may see these relationships as thrilling and controllable. They believe they can fix him, heal him, that their love alone can transform a killer into a prince. It's narcissism disguised as compassion. You know, the belief that you're so special, so pure, that you can change someone who's murdered children. The third reason might be the most disturbing: fame by association. These women know that dating a serial killer makes them famous, notorious, important. They'll be interviewed, written about, remembered, even if it's for all the wrong reasons. Ted Bundy understood what they wanted, and he gave it to them. But hybristophilia isn't just about individual psychology. It's something that threatens society itself. Because when we make killers into celebrities, we create more killers. When Julio Perez Silva was finally caught in 2001, the media went insane. Newspapers ran daily stories about the psychopath of Alto Hospicio. Television crews descended on the small mining town. His face was everywhere, and somewhere else, someone else was watching, learning, planning. This is the copycat effect, the documented phenomenon where media attention on killers inspires others to follow in their footsteps. Criminologists have been warning about it for decades, but we keep making the same mistakes. We give killers the one thing they crave most: attention. Just think about it. Before Bundy, serial killers were largely unknown to the public. After him, they became celebrities. The Zodiac Killer sent letters to newspapers because he wanted fame. The BTK Killer taunted police for the same reason. The Unabomber wrote manifestos. All of them were doing more than just killing. They were performing. And every time we put their faces on magazine covers, every time we make movies about them, every time we turn their trials into entertainment, we're sending a message to the next monster. Do something terrible enough and you'll be famous forever. The science backs this up. Studies show that mass shooting events cluster. When one happens, others follow within days or weeks. The same pattern holds for serial killers. Media attention creates what researchers call behavioral contagion. It spreads like a virus. The scariest part is that it's not just inspiring copycats, it's creating fans. Doreen Leoy eventually broke ties with Ramirez in 2009 after DNA confirmed he had raped and murdered 9-year-old Mei Long, though it seems she never legally filed for divorce. It took DNA evidence of child murder to make her question their marriage. What does that tell us about society? What does that say about us? These aren't isolated cases of misguided attraction. They're symptoms of something much larger, something that's changing how we think about evil itself. Julio Perez Silva was sentenced to life in prison for the rape and murder of 14 women between 1998 and 2001. He sits in a Chilean prison cell today, probably reading letters from strangers who think they understand him. Meanwhile, the families of his victims struggle to remember their daughters' faces. Their names fade from memory. Their stories go untold. This is the real tragedy of our obsession with serial killers. The No Notoriety campaign was started by parents whose children were killed in mass shootings. Their message is simple. Stop making killers famous. Don't show their faces. Don't say their names. Don't give them the attention they crave. But we can't seem to stop ourselves. Netflix produces serial killer documentaries because they get millions of views. Publishers print their memoirs because people buy them. Museums display their artifacts because tourists pay admission. We've turned murder into entertainment. And somewhere, someone is taking notes. So what does it say about us that killers become celebrities? What does it reveal about human nature that someone can murder children and still receive love letters? Maybe it shows that we're drawn to the extreme, that in our safe suburban lives, we crave a taste of danger, that we're fascinated by people who've crossed lines we'd never dare approach. Or maybe it reveals something darker. Maybe it shows that part of us admires the ultimate freedom, the freedom to take whatever you want, whenever you want it, to live without rules, without consequences, without conscience. The women who fell in love with Bundy weren't loving the killer. They were loving the fantasy of absolute power, the dream of someone so dangerous that they could destroy anyone except you. But fantasies have consequences. When we romanticize monsters, we create more monsters. When we make killers famous, we inspire copycats. When we forget victims to focus on their murderers, we lose part of our humanity. Charles Manson even got engaged to a young fan in 2014. He was 80 years old, dying in prison, and someone still wanted to marry him. That fan probably never thought about Sharon Tate, never considered the unborn child who died with her, never imagined the terror those victims felt in their final moments. She was thinking about herself, about her own fantasy, about her own needs. And that, perhaps, is the most disturbing truth of all. Every documentary that focuses on the monster instead of the human cost perpetuates a cycle of violence and obsession. The fascination just reveals our darkest impulses, our attraction to power, our need to feel special, our hunger for attention. But it's also a mirror, and the real question isn't why people fall in love with serial killers. The real question is, what do we choose to see when we look into that mirror? Do we see the victims, forgotten and discarded? Or do we see ourselves, captivated by the very darkness we claim to despise? The choice is ours, but somewhere tonight, in a prison cell, a killer is reading another love letter, and somewhere else, someone is deciding whether to write one.